Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Vicky Shivani as India from Group 7. My friend and I are presenting our PowerPoint. Our PowerPoint called Akad in the Economic Islam. In the first, let me describe what is Akad. Definition of akad is the word of akad comes from Arabic, which means bond or obligation. Usually also mean contract or agreement. What these words mean is to enter into a bond for agreement. When two groups enter into an agreement, it's called akad, which is mutual giving and receiving bond. So, akad can just be called of agreement of two groups.
My name is Faiz. I will continue our presentation. In Akad, there are 4 principles that must be present in running Sharia economics. You can see it in our PPT. Number 1, the principle of freedom. We discuss the freedom of both parties in transaction. Number 2 and 3, the principle of willingness and principle of justice, which will be explained by Hikam. And number 4, principle of legal certainty. And in this time, I will explain the first of the 4 principle, and 3 other principle will be explained later by my friend. Next, the principle of freedom. In Akad, the parties are free to make an agreement, but the content and the material of the agreement determine the terms. The freedom to make this agreement is justified as long as it does not conflict with the provisions of Islamic Sharia. With the principle of freedom of Akad, new agreement can be created that take the form outside the Musamma named agreement, such the Musyarakah Mutanakisah, multi-level marketing, franchise, land facility agreement, margin during construction, by wafa, a combination of by wafa and syirkah, by istiqlal, by tawaruk, ijarah muntahiyah, bitamlik, ijarah mausuf, ijarah mausufah, ijarah mausufah fi zimmah, lease purchase, mudarabah bil wadi'ah, and mudarabah muntahiyah bitamlik.
The principle of willingness. This principle states that all transactions cannot must beyond the basis of willingness between each party. Uh, these parties' willingness in manifest to the agreement without having to fulfill certain formalities. In Islamic law, the agreement is general voluntary. Willingness between parties in akad is considered a prerequisite uh, for the relation of all transaction. If this principle is not fulfilled in transaction, it means eating something uh, in a vanity way. Thus, the transaction or cannot be said to have achieved a form of mutually voluntary activity between the parties if there is pressure, coercion, and fraud. The principle of justice. The principle of justice is an important part of Islamic and economic financial transaction. The establishment of justice has been mentioned in the Quran as the main mission of the purpose. This principle is justice also means that a form of transaction that invade in an element that invades in element of injustice are not justified. The principle of akad requires parties to carry out correct practice in transaction. Uh, the agreement must always bring fair and must not cause harm to either party.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Irfan Nur Afandi. I will continue the presentation of Group 7 about akad in Islamic economics. Okay, the next thing is the principle of legal certainty. In Islamic law, it is taught states that an akad occurs when there is an agreement between the parties who do it. This implies that every agreement made by both parties is a sacred act. The fulfillment of akad is a command of Allah and is a form of obedience to Allah. It means you have to obey all the principle of the akad. If you break it, you will get a sin. Okay, next is things that can break the akad. Things that can break the akad is something that is against the principle of akad. There are 1. Coercion. Coercion can cancel the akad because it is against the principle of willingness. It forces the other party to give up what he has, even though he does not want to give for some reason. Even though he does want to give it for some reason. 2. Fraud. Fraud goes against the principle of justice. Fraud isn't fair. Fraud is not fair. Because if both parties exchange goods, but one party gives a different amount, yeah, it is unfair. 3. Usury. Usury is prohibited in Islam, so it is against the principle of legal certainty. 4. Is disputing parties. It contradicts the principle of freedom, in which both parties must mutually agree. Okay, that's all from me. The rest will be read by other group member. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Solution to problem of akad. In akad, the parties are free to make an agreement, but the content and material of the agreement, determining the condition, determining the implementation, enter into an agreement, including determining how to resolve a dispute. The freedom to make this agreement is justified as long as it does not conflict with the provisions of Islamic Sharia. In akad, the parties should meet each other to facilitate the akad agreement. Transactions with people with no end to net easily be left with after people say. Solution to problem of akad. Goods should be their own and not other purpose. If the item belongs to someone else, it is better of the persons selling it has received permission from the owner of the item. A transaction carried must be on a voluntary basis between the seller and the buyer. Thus, the transactions carried out cannot be achieved if there is pressure and compulsion. Our team Hikam, Faiz, Vicky, Mai, and Irfan. Thank you.
Thank you for your attention. Thank you for watching this video. And wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much.